thank you for spending the next 45 minutes with me. And just a couple of interesting statistics to start off our show here. Did you know that 30% of Canadians listed competitive salary and employee benefits as the major thing when they're seeking a job? 30%. Did you know that 80% of our workforce is actively looking for work or will talk to a recruiter? I'm not saying our employees are actually picking up the phone and calling recruiters, but I'm talking about recruiters that are actually looking at your people. So, and those people, those employees they're contacting, are actually engaging with those recruiters. They're asking them, hey, what does that organization offer? You're headhunting me. What are they offering me? And you know what they're doing? They're actually comparing to see, is it similar? What else is out there? It's like they even say in newspapers, people are watching, and they'll seek those ads just to kind of see what's all out there. Even if they are happy with their current position, they're still watching. So therefore, you want to make sure your employees are happy, and you want to keep them. So therefore, compensation is one of the key elements to attracting, retaining, and engaging your employees. So as you know, I'm Barb. I work with Juna Consulting. I've been there for, over 4 years now. Seems like just yesterday. And I'm a registered professional recruiter, so I'm out there actively helping our clients source candidates. And as well, I'm a CHIRP, which is changing, as you know. So I'm still used to the Certified Human Resources Professional title. And thank you for spending the next 45 minutes, and we're going to focus on total compensation. So in today's workforce, we are going to review it from 3 large workshop objectives. So in the next 45 minutes, we're going to determine if you are paying your employees competitively in the marketplace. So we're going to look at external equity. That's number 1. Number 2, discover if you have internal pay issues. And finally, number 3, we're going to identify employee benefits that will attract, retain, and engage your workers to your organization. Okay? On your own, if you could just simply jot down what you want to get out of this session. So if you have a burning question or something you really wanted out of the total compensation presentation, please take a minute and write that down. Why are you here? And perhaps over the next 45 minutes I will answer that question, but if not, I'm here after. Please come and see me, and we'll make sure we get that question answered. So another 10 seconds, just jot down why you're here, or if you have any burning questions. Thank you for doing that, and we'll circle back to it at the end. So when you hear about external equity, and I know there are some HR professionals in the room, which is wonderful, so this might be a repeat of information you know, but for those of you who run HR off the side of your desk, you're probably wondering, what does external equity mean? And quite simply, it's just a combination of your monetary and non-monetary awards that you offer to keep competitive in the marketplace. So it could be your salary or your pay structure. It could be your benefits, legislated or non-legislated. I love employment standards, by the way. And it could also mean any perks that you offer as well through your benefit program or other. So again, that's really the definition of external equity. And how do you know if you're paying your employees competitively? So there are a wide variety of ways you can do this. So at your table team, answer this question. How do you know, as an organization, how you're paying your employees competitively? We'll take about a minute or 2. Discuss with your table team. Da-dun, da-dun. Another 30 seconds, please. Okay, groups. So I'm going to ask our lovely Vanna, our lovely Vanna, if you can grab the mic. I'm going to ask for just one or two volunteers to share. How do you know that you're paying your employees competitively within the market? Who has some good examples of that to share with the large group? I can see it on your face. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can summarize what I said. I just got voluntold. So I work at the Spruce Grove Public Library, and a little history, we used to hemorrhage professional staff. It was very, very bad. And the reason being is the Edmonton Public Library pays their staff gratuitously. And U of A pumps out librarians every year, Grant McEwen pumps out technicians, and they all want to work in Edmonton because they have the highest wages.
Yeah.
But they can't work there until they get some experience. So they come up to Spruce Grove, get their year, move on, and we couldn't retain them. We know now that we have external equity because we are actually attracting librarians from Edmonton out to us. And it was on the efforts of our library board working with the city of Spruce Grove to have equitable pay. Our benefits are also quite good. They're with the city of Spruce Grove. Mm-hmm. And then the added little value that many professional staff find is the opportunity to wear multiple hats, to learn and grow outside of their silo of a job description, which is more common in Edmonton, and the ability to move up the ladder a lot faster.
Excellent. So we are talking about total compensation, including the benefits and the perks.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So when you think about best practices, okay, I'm glad we didn't have that little accident. Thank you. Sorry, I digress there. But when you think about total compensation, when you're intentionally looking at external equity, we've put together some best practices to share with you from what we've seen with our clients. So this may help you moving forward. So there's 3 principles. The first one is fair pay. Pay them enough to take money off the table. But in order to do that, you have to know what your jobs are worth. So generally, as HR professionals, we put together some pretty darn good job descriptions that are very accurate and clear, and they portray the role pretty accurately. For those of you that operate HR off the sides of your desk, there are those that can help you put those together, because that's your basis for everything we're going to talk about that's coming up. So your job description really does define the position, and it's equal to the position, not the person. We find that clients are building job descriptions around the person. That's not correct. So build the position around the position, not around the person. Number 2, does your organization have a compensation philosophy? How many do? Nobody. Okay, so this is great. So what that means is, where do you want to be as in terms of compensation and external equity? So we generally have those 3 things here: lead, median, or lag. So if your organization wants to lead the market, That would be a compensation philosophy. If you want to lag behind the average market, external market, we wouldn't suggest it. We've seen it, but you're paying less than what the average is. And then, of course, your median is the middle. We also classify the middle. Have you ever seen percentile? So P50, P25, P75. So generally, P50 is your middle percentile, or your average, your median. And then organizations can choose to adjust their compensation philosophy on that scale. We had one client we did a salary survey for this year, and they're about 120 people, they're a college, and their compensation philosophy was to pay at the P75. So what that means is 75% are paying less than them, 25% are paying more than them. But P75 is pretty strong, and that's actually written into their compensation philosophy and their policies. So they do a market survey every 2 to 3 years to make sure that they're competitive. And then also what came out of that salary is we drew recommendations around, here's where you're not at the P75, or here's maybe where you're paying above market, above their P75. So you can actually get quite quantitative with your compensation philosophy and make sure that you're paying your employees where you want to see on the scale. Generally, we start, if you don't have one, P50 is a pretty good place to start, and then collect your data around that. So you do have in your package the presentation PowerPoint slides, but you'll also have in your package a resource list. And on that resource list, we've actually listed some sites that you guys might want to explore to kind of look externally out to the market. Oh, sorry, Vanna White. This lady over here. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.
So you couldn't find compensation surveys, but like how would you decide who's paying higher and lower, or the range is more than just that?
Well, some of the surveys that are out there actually do get into percentiles. So they'll actually show what's P25, 50, 75 are generally the more common ones we see. And if not, then your network is so important. So if you're in HR or other, your network can be so important. Maybe your neighbor, your partner has participated in a salary survey and they want to share that with you. So it all depends on the research and where you're looking. But in the resource list we provided, there are some links there to check out. Some don't give percentiles, some will just give the median, which is the middle number. Some will give the average as well. So look for the average or the median, and that's a good place to start if you're kind of new. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that.
Just so you know, our handout's not in there, so we can follow up.
Oh, I apologize. Our handout is not in there. I just found out the resource list, so all of you are probably looking, what is she talking about? I'm sorry. So we will get that to you. Thank you. Thank you. Here I am lagging on and on. So that's the compensation philosophy. I do think it's really important because if you're not transparent with your staff, how are you going to attract them into your organization? I had one client, they're very small, and she told me that this was before I started with them. She joined the organization and they didn't even have a salary range for her. And then they hired her without a salary. And then she's like, what's going on? What am I being paid? Hello? And then they invited her to a coffee session with the executive director, kind of like a meet and greet the executive director. So she went to this session hoping she'd figure out her salary because she had unconditionally implied, accepted the job. They still didn't tell her. So finally, she did get an answer and she joined the organization, but who would spend that much time if you're not given that salary up front, if the company is not transparent about what they want to pay and what their compensation philosophy is. So it's a really good starting point to start to think about that. And finally, the market scan I briefly touched on. We see some of our clients doing surveys every 3 years. They don't have to be formal. If you're a small organization, we've done compensation research on position by position. So for example, I had a not-for-profit association, I just sent the report this week, asking if their ED was paid fairly. They didn't think so, but they had nothing to back it up. So we just took their past ED history, the current ED history, and we prepared a recommendations report on where we think their current ED needs to land. She's landing way, way below where the old ED was, so we made some powerful recommendations, but just not on compensation. We also went into the benefits, because we saw there was some gaps between what the past ED or what average EDs are at compared to what she was at. So they'll take the recommendations likely back to council and move forward with a vote on that. So you can have the ability to do position by position if you are smaller.
Do most organizations share their salary grid?
Well, some do, some don't. But you know what? That's why I really like the salary surveys, because people feel they can share it. And if you have a large enough sample, they know their data is confidential. I don't want to share with you exactly what my ED is paid to the dollar, but maybe I'll give you a range, right? So they feel more comfortable sharing a range. So in your network, that's what I would propose. If you have other not-for-profits that you want to reach out to, just say, you know what, my ED, I'm not sure if I'm quite in the range. Would you mind sharing a range of what your ED is making and maybe an overall percentage of benefits on the salary? They don't have to give you specifics, but the Bolin survey is pretty good on sharing some of that data. And there's other surveys out there as well. So yeah, maybe not to the dollar, but they may be willing to share a range with you. And as you know, our market changes so much. We had, the very good up period, and now we're into more of the recession period. So I think it's really important to evaluate where your employees are at with today's market. And before we were talking about keeping people and paying them premium after premium. Now we're talking about reducing their salaries, or condensing work weeks, maybe 4 days instead of 5, maybe laying staff off. So again, that's in all of how you communicate where you're at that time on compensation with your staff. So now that we've talked about outside of your organization, let's bring it back inside your organization. Because this is one of the areas that many business owners do forget to look at, is how do we take all our internal people and look at them fairly and equitably. So internal equity is basically paying people relatively equal, but for the same position. Or it could also mean relatively fair for differences in positions, which basically means if you have a supervisor, you're not going to pay him the same as your frontline workers. So you do got to make sure there's internal equity among the people in your organization. We had a client who had 2 very different positions, and people talk. They do talk, all of them talk, and she found out what salary a different position was making. So again, you come down to the position, not the person, and are you paying them fairly within your organization? So if you have 2 executive assistants, are they being paid relatively fair and equal? If not, you better know the differences. Maybe one has more education, maybe one has different reporting structure or different projects within her job description. Make sure you have a good sense of where your people are paid and why they're being paid that. And all that external equity piece will help bring together the internal as well. Okay? So does your organization have internal pay issues? So again, this is always an interesting question, because I think no matter where I go, every organization does have some internal pay equity issues. So take a couple minutes, and if you don't, fabulous, but take a couple minutes at your table and talk about, if you want to share, some of those challenges you're facing. 2 minutes. One more minute. Okay, group, I'm going to call you back to me. I know this is an interesting subject when you're discussing internal pay. Can I ask for a volunteer to share their internal pay challenges? Do I have a volunteer that wants to share that? Oh, no? Okay, so when you're dealing with internal, I thought maybe he saw something I didn't. Okay, so as we start to talk further about internal equity issues, there are some best practices that we want to share with you to ensure that that internal equity is balanced and fair amongst your employees. So again, there's 3 key factors that we share, which is the first one is job analysis, and even though you may not have heard of this term, you probably are aware of it. Our general rule of thumb, this is our HR lingo, is if your job description changes more than about 20%, you should do a job analysis. So that's a full review of the position to understand those roles, the responsibilities, and even the qualifications that you would need to come into that position. And again, as I said earlier, that job description is fundamental. It's an essential tool for everything you do in HR. And if you find that job is changing that dramatically, then guess what? You have to look at the title. You have to look at the compensation level that's been associated with it as well. And then you have to evaluate the external and the internal equity on that position. Okay? If you find that, say, during your annual performance review, there's 2 things added or two things taken out of the job description, and it doesn't fundamentally change that template, then that's okay. You don't have to do a full review. That rule of thumb again, 20%. Okay? We do a lot of job analysis for our clients, especially if they're looking at a different level of position. So one of our clients, they had an HR coordinator. I'd probably say administrator, if you really look at it on site. And they actually were thinking, we need more than this. We're growing, we're becoming more dynamic, and the HR issues, obviously, and as you're growing, become more and more. So we helped that management team. We did a job analysis. So what did they need? So we brought them all together like a mini focus group. And we said, what do you guys need for your HR position? What do you find you're spending too much time on? And we actually created a brand new HR role. And then we classified it into their job band according to their levels of experience and education in the job. And we helped them recruit it, that position as well. And she's very successful to date. So sometimes you might have to look at the bigger picture. This position might not fit, but what would? And sometimes through that, it's really tough decisions to make as well, because they did have to end up letting that administrator go. But again, the organization has flourished since then. Okay? And that flourish sometimes means hard business decisions. The second one is job evaluation. That's getting a bit more complex if you don't have a job classification system in place. But what that essentially means is it puts jobs in order of worth, and then they know what to pay people in that order the job sits in. So sometimes what our clients may have to do, just as I talked about, they may have to reclassify a role into a different job band. to make sure they're paying that position what it's worth, internally and externally. And then number 3 is compression. And this gets a bit more challenging because this is an internal equity issue we often see. And we often see it where if you bring in a new employee in, their compensation is very close to others that are already in the organization, or they're even higher than that. So then it becomes a compression issue. And it really does become how can we be transparent about that and communicate the value in that. So we've actually done compression analysis for our clients as well, and providing the holistic approach of all their people, where is a nice compression to be between each of the levels or between each of the positions that are very closely aligned. Oh, yes.
If you're a very small organization and you don't necessarily have job classifications, for example, we have 9 positions in the entire organization. How transparent do you need to be in terms of salary, either salary ranges or salaries? And like you just said, when you bring in somebody new and you broaden the range of the new person's description, how transparent do you need to be in terms of other employees knowing that person's salary? Like like you say, people talk.
They do.
I think it's not a fair thing for one employee to come in and say, oh, so-and-so's getting this much. I don't think it's appropriate for you to be discussing one employee's salary with another.
I agree.
So how do you deal with those kinds of things while not sharing the appropriate information?
So again, I truly believe that individual salaries, like we mentioned earlier with networking, shouldn't be shared to the dollar. But where you should be transparent is perhaps the salary bands. Like for an administrative position, we're going to pay between $40,000 and $50,000, whatever that band may be. And then your experience and what you bring into the organization will fit according into that. So if you do bring somebody in that's relatively senior on the upper end, and they fit into the $50,000 mark, then you know why. And you can justify that as the hiring manager, why they're at a higher salary than that other person. But then it becomes the organization's responsibility to grow that current person to make sure they're given that learning and development opportunity to receive salary increases as well. So I always recommend a band, but not to purely say everybody here's what you make to the dollar, because that's not fair and that's confidentiality within the organization, but to in fact come up with bands that you can share and be transparent with, and let them know that based on your qualifications, your skill level, your experience is where we're going to place you on the band. And that ties back into external equity and knowing where you want to pay on that position as well. Are you at the 50th, 75th, and then representing your salary band to ensure internal equity. Does that help? Okay, thank you. So now that we've looked at your internal and your external equity, we need to explore all the perks and all the fun stuff, well, not necessarily all fun, that benefits can lead to. So again, around benefits, we always have perception of fairness and equality as well in our workplace. So we're going to take a couple minutes to open this topic. What employee benefits do you guys offer to attract, retain, and engage the right staff? So we're going to take a couple minutes, talk at your table what interesting things you offer, what you do in your organization as in terms of perks and benefits that you offer. And please, I'll ask you to share with the larger group after. So 2 minutes.
That can be
we'll bring this back.
No, it's good for me. Is it good for you?
Because, Janet was just doing like this. You're standing straight, so would you rather have this closer or?
Oh, so you're saying she couldn't hear me?
No. I'm just saying before, so if I can connect that, and it seems like the mic gets better when it is on here, so.
Oh, am I not talking into this at all? Oh, it's not in.
Your head, and you need to stay right here with these ones.
And I move a lot. I know that.
One way, I don't blame you. I can't stay in one place.
So what would you like me to try?
That's fine. I'm just saying this thing. Yeah.
But just stay focused right on it.
If not, I mean, you can hear it when it comes to the sound system. You can hear it when it doesn't. So.
Okay. Let me try. I'll try to.
Yeah, I'm just saying because I see you being uncomfortable a little. Well,
I have never used a mic like this, so I find it very odd.
Yeah, I know.
But that's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
You just tell me what, and you can just move it if you want.
If this is good, I'm going to talk from.
Check it out if you want.
We'll bring it to there. Let's try that. So we'll do another 30 seconds. So group, I'm just calling you back with my call. So drawing your attention back, please. Can I ask for a volunteer? Can I ask for a volunteer that would like to share what benefits they offer in their organization? Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
So we have an extensive healthcare benefit, as well as our board gives us a paid time off between Christmas and New Year, so we
Nice.
get that full week off. So that's a nice perk. I think education-wise, they always support anyone who wants to further their education. So they don't necessarily pay for the education, but will give you the time, paid time off of work to do that. And another thing, which is a culture at Sage, is that family comes before work. So if there's ever a situation where the employees that have young children or employees that have older parents, etc., if there ever is a situation where they're needed outside of work, that has to come first. And I think that's a perk.
And elder care is becoming more and more commonplace, and it is going to be, well, it is covered under employment legislation, and there is case law to support that. So thank you for bringing that up because it's very important today. Who else wants to share? Any other neat ideas? Thank you.
I work for a very small nonprofit. There's only 7 staff on board. But one of the perks that I put through was the staff would have free access to our fitness center, which is basically a private club. So they can come in before work, after work, just work around when it's not being overly used by our members.
Fabulous.
So that's a $500 value right there.
Yeah.
Per year. So, and then they have access to programming as well at membership prices. So if they want to take a computer class in the evening or whatever, they can sign up for that.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So again, when we talk about employee benefits, we do have some best practices that we'd like to share with you, and hopefully you can implement them within your organization. So number 1 is just around the benefits. Offer a program that they want. So a lot of the times, the employer does not even ask the employee what they value. And as you guys know today, it's so important. We work more than I sleep? No. We work a lot, and in Canada we are known to work day, night, weekends. So how do we help to balance that? So it's important for you to gauge your staff and see what they value in terms of benefits. If you're not, you may be completely missing the mark. So again, we talked about employee surveys earlier. Please survey your staff. Ask them what's important to them in their group benefits. As well, you can pull usage reports and dollar amounts and see what's being used and what's not being used. But make sure it's what they want. Benefit programs can change, and you can survey your staff to see what's important to them. On the flip side, once you know what's important, educate them, because people do forget what's encompassed in their benefits. So make sure you're doing lunch and learns or education sessions around what's in the benefits. So actually next week with one of our clients, they have an RBC RRSP program in place, and it's great. They match it 1 to 2, which is phenomenal. And they're not for profit, just so you know. But anyways, RBC's changing the way their fee structure is presented. So in the employee reports, they used to have a percentage amount for the fee structure. And not many people probably look at that. But what they're doing is RBC now, by law and legislation, has to change it to a dollar amount. Well, I can see employees' eyes starting to go, what? I didn't know that percentage was actually equal to this dollar amount. They probably haven't correlated it. So we're doing a session for the staff on the impact. Here's what you're going to see. Here's how it really doesn't change. It's just changing from percentage to dollar amount. And think of it in terms of being proactive. It's much better to present that data to the staff in advance instead of having all the questions come after about their statements and why the switch. So we're doing those actually on a quarterly basis with that group. And whatever the topic is, I think the next one will be on another similar RRSP and how to engage their spouses. So how can we set up a spousal RRSP plan for them? We've also done sessions on benefits. So here's what your health spending account looks like. Here's what your lifestyle account looks like. Here's what's covered in your health benefits. Just covering off paramedical, ambulance, etc. Because you know what? Your employees don't retain that information unless they use them. So it's important to cover that with them every so often. Okay? Number 2, we talked about this. Juliana mentioned the orientation and training and how important it is to build it into the solid onboarding program. We often see the group benefits being covered in that first week. Now that's a nice to have as a new employee. How many sick days? How many flex days? What are my group benefits? Do I get a massage every day or every year? So in that first week, it's nice to recap in the orientation program, hey, here's a summary of your benefits. And go through it with the employee. Here's how your dependents play into that. Here's how your spouse can utilize it. So we start to build that into our orientation program as well. And finally, culture. Take some time. Promote your, well, look at that language, unique value proposition. Look at that. That is not, it wasn't planned. But again, make sure you're selling your culture and letting them know how that does tie into the perks and benefits of the organization. And don't be shy. Like, as a professional recruiter, we sell it in the interview. Now, it's not blatantly selling it, but it's a genuine selling the organization. Here's what we have to offer. Here's what sets us apart. Here's why you should come and join us. We're wonderful. But again, make sure that balloon stays full after the first year, and it's not closing down. You better follow through on those promises. And ask them, as in part of your new employee onboarding, ask them, are the benefits working? Gather their feedback. Make sure they understand how they're externally paid. We've actually went to the point, we did a small salary review for a not-for-profit. They had 7 employees at that time, and the ED wanted to know, are they competitive? Are they not? So what we did is we did salary research on each of those positions, but we actually told the staff, here's what we're doing. We're going to be looking at the external market, and we want your help. So we actually told them, hey, if you have any data on your position, bring it to the table. Because remember, 80% are looking or are willing to talk to a recruiter. They have that data. They will bring it to you. And it may be accurate, it may not. It's your job to kind of flesh out, is it accurate? And can we use it in our data? So I think out of the 7, we probably had 4 employees bring forward either job ads or whatever salary research they came up with that we used. We used it in our research. And if we didn't, we'd let them know why. You know, you're comparing a senior EA with 10 years to a junior EA with 2 years. So again, it's all about communicating the value and engaging them, and you will retain them. I wanted just to give you a quick statistic that generally the average cost of benefits all in is usually about 14 to 15% of salary for the average company. But obviously the big guys and the big Fortune 100 companies, they're up to around 30% of salary, gross salary, for their benefits. So it's a pretty wide gap. So again, look at your budgets and see what you can offer. Look at what your employees' feedback is. And if you can change it, you may have to look at adjusting it just slightly to help fill the needs and wants. So our final slide, now I have here super groovy ideas. That's really not my lingo, because I'm not too like the super groovy girl. So I'm going to approach it, that's her. So I'm going to approach it more of some of the things that I've seen. I think they're super cool, because we work with large organizations and smaller. So I'm going to give you some of the things that we've seen that are pretty popular. So starting with the RSP, review your RSP. There are organizations out there that are capturing more into the dollar amounts. We see an average of about 5% being contributed, at least matching nowadays. We also see what's really neat is EDO days. Does anybody know what that is? Thank you, earn days off. It's becoming very popular where, and it's however you want to structure it. It's not a compressed work week, but say you're letting your employees work an extra half an hour a day and taking 1 day off in lieu. And you can build policy around that. People like that. We also see where they get summer Friday afternoons off to be with their family, to go camping for the long weekend or the weekend. So we're starting to see a lot of that happening. And we're starting to see a lot of flexible working arrangements. People don't want to be coming into an office every day. But what does that look like? I was telling Janet earlier, I used to go to an office every day. And in an HR role, I mean, your door is always knocked on. You're always needing to take under advisement. I still do that, but I don't go to an office every day. I get more work done at home than I would any given day in an office. I'm very productive. So you have to assess with your staff, do they have the ability to do that? Can they remain focused? Chances are yes, and I would start with the yes, and then see how it shapes out. But you do have to have firm expectations and deliverables for them to meet while they're working from home. But start with that trust factor. I know it's hard to kind of just let it out and fully trust, but start with a little bit of that built in. Food, treats, snacks, who doesn't like that? And even if it's as simple as Juliana mentioned earlier, the birthday cake per month, I think that's great. If you're having a team meeting, bring a little snack in. We do 360 surveys for one of our healthcare clients. One of their values is fun. They have snacks and food and things mentioned consecutively. They love it. So people like when they can eat. Some other things, yoga. Bring in the running room. Mental health is such an awareness around what we need to be focused on. Because like I said earlier, we work a lot. So where do we find that integration between work and our personal lives? Well, maybe you can bring it into your workplace. Yoga at lunch, or bring the running room in, and at lunch again, go for walks. Teach people how to get away from the workplace for just a little while. And I think I'm done. So finally, I want you to just take a quick look at that goal you wrote down, or what you wanted out of this session at the very start. What did you write down at the start? And hopefully I've captured it in some way, shape, or form through the last 45 minutes. But if not, I'm around for a little bit. So please come up and talk to me at the end of the session.